I don't know who I am to you or who you are to me. And that's what betrayed partners experience. It's like waking up married to a stranger, also being a stranger to yourself.
What is intimate partner betrayal?
So I am defining, this is the Andrea Rogers definition. I'm defining intimate partner betrayal as a breach of trust in a committed relationship that violates the safety of the relationship.
Would you just read it again from the top?
From the top, intimate partner betrayal is a breach of trust in a committed relationship that violates the safety of the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It is a form of relational abuse. And I know some people have an aversion to that word. We're not calling anyone abusers, but we are acknowledging that this is a form of relational abuse in which one partner repeatedly violates the trust, the emotional safety, or mutual agreements of a committed relationship through deception, through secrecy, or disloyalty. So this would include sexual infidelity, emotional deception, financial dishonesty, spiritual manipulation, and repeated breaches of trust that result in significant emotional and psychological harm to the betrayed partner. That was a lot.
That was a lot. It's awesome. I made some notes. I want us to break it down a little bit. When I'm talking about this with people, when I'm trying to help people understand betrayal and the traumatic nature of betrayal, what I keep coming back to is that breach of trust that once discovered shatters the sense of safety.
Yeah, because people want to say, they say it's just cheating. Like people get cheated on every day, right? Like move on. And it's like, no, it is disrupting the entire internal world. You said shattering. It is a shattering of a person's whole identity. And I know that sounds dramatic to some people, but any partner will tell you they have a version of who they were before the betrayal, and they have a version of who they are after the betrayal.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm thinking about a couple that I just worked with recently. Spent 2 days with this couple, 2 long days with this couple. And we were going back, we were doing a process. You know this process, Andrea. I call it revamps, where we're going back and we're looking at pieces of the timeline where we're taking little isolated moments of what this betrayed partner knew, and that attempt to reconcile that with what they now know, right? And this woman was talking about this picture from this vacation, about the feeling she has when she sees her dog, about the certain locations. And what I watched happen before my eyes is she just let out a cascade of the pain and the confusion and the loss. The husband's face, I mean, he was broken in a good and appropriate way. And this is what he said: I didn't see until now how this undermines everything you knew about your life.
Wow.
And that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, I say it's like waking up and finding out you were adopted, right? You spent your whole life thinking, this is my family. These are the people who I came from. This is how I'm connected to them. This is who they are to me, right? And then you wake up and it's like, no, not only do I not come from you or belong to you, right? You hid this part, and I don't know who I am. I don't know who I am to you or who you are to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what betrayed partners experience. It's like waking up married to a stranger, but also being a stranger to yourself.
Yes. And if I can get a little geeky with this, just to help people understand it better, in terms of how we're wired as human beings, our sense of identity is intimately linked to our relational experience and our context in the world. So if the world suddenly shifts, if the world isn't the world I thought it was, and my relationship to you isn't what I thought it was, and you're not who I thought you were, that absolutely changes any degree of certainty about what I feel about myself and think about myself, know about myself. Yeah. And I think it's important also in your definition, you made clear you're not just talking about sexual betrayal here.
Yeah, I kind of think of this like a nesting doll, those dolls where it's like you have the
Mm-hmm.
big doll and then you open it up and it's like all these other dolls in there.
Yes.
We work in the context of the sexual betrayal, but in that sexual betrayal, people are also experiencing emotional betrayal, right? Where you're sharing intimate thoughts and ideas with someone. You're prioritizing your emotional bond with someone else over your bond with me. You're keeping a relationship a secret and maybe comparing negatively me to someone else. There's the intellectual infidelity, which we don't talk about, the intellectual betrayal, where other people know things about you that I don't know. I remember saying that to my ex husband. It's like, there's a VIP section of your life and I'm not in it. I'm on the outside of that watching, at the club, I'm telling on myself. You didn't go to the club, I did.
I didn't. Maybe you could take me one day.
But at the
I was
club,
never that cool.
you have the rope and they have to let you in. Not everybody gets in there. And so that intellectual betrayal, financial betrayal, we know if they've been going to strip clubs, prostitutes, massage parlors, affairs, buying gifts, hiding money. Even, these are the types of betrayal we don't talk about often, which is like the technological betrayal, because that's new, right? So you have a smartphone, and now suddenly all smartphones are a trigger for me because you did most of your acting out on your phone,
Yeah.
right? Or you're using Amazon to look at pictures of women in their underwear instead of shopping. So now me seeing you on an app, even if it's just to shop for things, is triggering to me. Texting, you were texting your affair partner. And so that piece of just like how we engage with technology, and of course spiritual betrayal, right? You are a pastor, you were a Bible study leader, you weaponized the Bible, you were in these religious groups. And then just the social betrayal. Some people never cross that line of physical, but they call it a work wife. They have a work wife or a work husband. Maybe they have secret, chat groups that they're in, or going to outings at work to like just be in these social environments. So technically, right, if we just are like black and white, is that betrayal? Well, yes, because when you go back to my definition, what we're talking about is the dishonesty, the secrecy, and the disloyalty.
Right. Because in the definition, I didn't write down this exact phrase, but something about the agreements in the relationship,
That's right, the mutual agreements.
the mutual agreements. And I think one thing that's important here that I often say to folks is both those that were explicitly spoken, like maybe marriage vows, but also those which are assumed.
Right.
Right. I mean, my wife and I, we have agreements that we've never talked about, but I think we're safe in assuming that there are things that we just don't do. We don't do that.
Right. Yeah, we don't say, hey, are we only having sex with each other?
Right. Right.
No married couple says that.
Right.
But you're right. There is an assumption that when we enter into a relationship and we say vows, that's a part of the system that we're agreeing to enter into.
Yes. And here in case any folks who are on the betraying side are listening to this and you're going, here's the test that I throw out there for those folks. If y'all have never really talked about it, so you're not sure if it's an agreement or not, why don't you just ask?
That's right.
And when they go, oh, there's your answer. There's your answer.
That's right.
That means you're hiding this because you know your partner would not be in agreement with that.
That is
Yeah.
exactly right. That's a very smart question, Jake.
Couple other kind of aspects of betrayal, because I've been thinking about this, the multi-dimensional. I hold up my little black diamond with its multiple facets here, the many facets of betrayal. One is moral, which has some overlap, I think, with spiritual and some of these commitment things, but there's something about like well, I worked with a couple where they were really big advocates in their community on anti-human trafficking measures, and then she discovers that he's participated in pornography, but also in other forms of acting. I don't want to get real specific here, but that almost certainly helped facilitate or fed into sex trafficking. That's huge.
Right.
That's a whole other dimension of betrayal. It's this moral, wait, I thought we had a shared morality. And now I feel tainted.
Yeah, because I was connected with you and representing myself in this way, and now I feel like a fraud.
Yeah, exactly. So one more piece of your definition I want to talk about, and you did, make a little note there when you read this part, but that's the part about it being relational abuse. And I do want to unpack that a little bit, because I think it really is important. There's a lot of conversation in our field about this right now, and there are people with some really strong opinions on this. But I love the middle way that you're trying to walk here, of saying we can call something abusive. We don't have to, tiptoe around that term, because it is abusive, without saying this defines that person as an abuser.
Yeah, for me, there's a lot of nuance in that, and I should have pulled up. I have an Andrea Rogers version of abuse as well, but part of that abuse is informed by, again, what agreements did I make? And did I violate those agreements in a way that was excessive? Right? It's like, okay, we all tell a lie at some point, but will we say we're liars? No. But when we start to repeatedly get into this pattern of behavior, I'm acting as if I'm that, even though I'm not. Right? So that's why we have to call it abuse, because it is abuse, but we're not saying this is a part of this person's identity, right? That's not a thread throughout their whole life. Most of the time we go back to childhood and we can see, hey, this person started out a sweet, innocent person, harm happened to them, and as a way to protect themselves against that harm, they develop into this. And I think the reason it's so touchy is because inherently this person feels awful. Right? To me, that's the difference between an abuser and someone who is abusive. They don't want that label, not as a defense, but because it doesn't resonate with who they really are in their hearts. And we know we all have instances where we act outside of who we really are. So then when you help the person start to heal, when you help them to really step into their true identity and living out of their values and healing the trauma of the past where they're not acting out of that woundedness, suddenly these relational abuse dynamics go away.
Yes, I think. Thank you for the way you said that, and that distinction. That's how I often explain it as well. Is I'm going to work very differently if I got two men in front of me, and one of them, and let's even take it out of the realm of sexual betrayal. Let's say this one man let's say he's bankrupt, and his dad just died, and his mom was diagnosed with cancer, and his wife is he and his wife are tangled up in a fight, and she gets really big, and in a moment he shoves her. Well, want to be super clear. That is not okay. And that is an abusive act. But that guy, if he immediately goes, oh my God, what have I done? Oh, and he's like, I never want to do it, because he sees what he did. right? That's very different than the guy that shoves and hits and knows good and well what he's doing.
And treats everyone like that in his life, by the way.
Yes, sure. Yeah, to one degree or another, until he meets a bigger bully. But that's two very different people, and we're going to have two very different processes of working. And in a similar way, now to bring it back to these more subtle forms of betrayal. Well, subtle is not the right word. It less visual than
Right.
like shoving
we
or
were
hitting
about
somebody,
to say the same
right?
thing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
There it is. There's that brain. But in my experience, and I think this happened this week with a couple I was working with, when his eyes were open to see that what he was doing was abusive, internally he was like, no. Wow. He's already doing recovery stuff and sober and all this, but it reached a depth of his heart where he's like, no, I do not want to be that man and do that to you. No way. Yeah. So I think it's helpful in the right way to use the term abuse, as long as we don't go overboard and start being black and white about it. And yeah. So
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in a home where there was lots of yelling, right? Yelling is abusive to children. It harms the children, right? Because it hurts. So, but would I say like, oh yeah, my mom's an abuser? No.
thank you, because about 2 weekends ago I yelled, and you should have seen poor sweet little MJ curl up into a ball. And I saw that, and I looked at her, and I told her, and I meant it. And I hope by the grace of God I follow through on it. I will never, ever use that volume with you again.